He's an entrepreneur, international professor, science researcher, musician, and promoter of social causes for sustainable development. During his career, he has co-founded several software and IT organizations such as Slice, the Mendoza Software Factory, SA, and Mendoza Technology Cluster. He's also the director of Valos, a nonprofit organization that promotes corporate social responsibility practices. He's also a partner of the Avena Foundation and a columnist in business innovation at La Ventana Americana, a bilingual radio show, and an executive MBA professor. A lot of stuff. You have a very long bio. But we're very, very happy to have you here. And can you, everybody give him a hand before?
Okay, thank you. Sorry for my interruption, but actually, usually your resume talks more about your past than your future, and we are here to build the future, not to talk about my past, right? So all you need to know is I'm from Mendoza, Argentina. That's why my British accent. And always is really nice to share what you really love or what you are working on. But it is even nicer when you can share this with people like you. Thank you for coming. And in this place and at this moment, because authentication, everybody knows that it's a big, big pain today, and we have to come up with something better. This is the agenda that we are going to review today. We will see something about authentication bases in general. I apologize because I know that some people here are experts about this topic, but we need to be everyone on the same page in order to understand and have the same level of conversation in the rest of the presentation. And we will talk about tomorrow, and especially we will discover or disclose here a big mistake that we have seen, and based on that big mistake, we brought our proposal, which is an open international standard in order to solve that issue. And we will review and discuss a little bit about that. And in the middle, I will show you a little bit about our technology, because especially people from the IEEE required me to show just this history dynamics and tune tapping technology. It could be cool to talk a little bit about. And then conclusion. Okay, have you heard about this guy before? Fernando Corbato? Okay, let me introduce him. This guy in the MIT, actually this guy is from California. He was born here in California, in Oakland, and he got his bachelor here also, but working as a professor and investigator in MIT more than 50 years ago, he was working in the first time-sharing system, and he came up with the idea of this authorization concept. The authorization concept needs or requires to know who the actual person is on the other side of the system, right? And at that moment, he said, okay, maybe we should start, first of all, with the identification. Then we have to authenticate in order to be sure if this person is who he or she claims to be. And then we will be able to authorize certain entries. Let's review these concepts in depth. This is the first challenge. It's an identification. Identification basically answered that question. Who are you? And this is, I just wanted to invite you to be aware how unnatural is the world, the digital world that we have created. User ID is something unnatural. Actually, your ID, your national ID passport, or you have another ID number for your California ID, you can get another ID for your university, for a library. I couldn't have my own user ID, for instance, in the library. I'm living in Palo Alto, and I try to get my own user ID, and I have to keep in mind that weird number, because it was, when I arrived, they told me this is your number. Okay, this is a way that we present ourselves, saying, okay, I am this number. I will keep a comparison with the immigration services. When you are entering here in the country, or in any country, you have to present your passport. This passport, first of all, says who you are. And then you have to check or verify if you are really that person that you claim to be, right? This is the second challenge, is authentication. In the authentication, we have basically three alternatives. Based on what you know, something that you know, could be your password, some PIN, some question and answer. Does it ring the bell? Mm-hmm. This is another nightmare. This is weird questions, and if those questions are really easy to remember, they are really easy to be guessed. With a minimum social engineering, you can guess all that information, and so on. In this case, when you are in the immigration services, the way that you are authenticated is with the biometric face recognition. This is an old-fashioned way to do that with your picture in the ID, right? Of course, you have a human being on the other side doing this face recognition, but actually it's a face recognition, it's biometric technology. And this is one of the alternatives that we have in order to be authenticated based on something that we know. The other alternative is something that you have. And here we have the famous hard token. You love it, right? Everybody loves it. And the new version of those hard tokens are the soft tokens. You can get this weird number that you have to read and retype, right? And finally, the challenge is how fast you can read and write. Because actually, if you have the phone, there are other alternatives, such as this, scan a QR code, or other alternative. Of course, now we can, before criticizing any technology, we have to go to that time when that technology was created, right? Because this solution was really great in order to replace this, but we had at that time few smartphones. Now that everybody has a smartphone, you can think in this kind of solution for massive authentication. And finally, something that what you are. This is biometry. And you have physiological and behavioral biometry. Right? Physiological is, as its name says, is any kind of physiological characteristic that actually hardly could vary with the time in your face, or if you are not Michael Jackson, you can keep these characteristics through the time pretty well. And let me just mention some of them. Facial recognition, hand biometry. This is something interesting to differentiate. The iris scan is when you can take, actually you are taking a picture of your eye, but you don't need something special, it's just a picture, and you are recognizing the pattern of the color of your eyes, and if you see an eye closely, you will see that. But the retina is more complicated because what you are scanning is the vein patterns behind your eye. You know, it's like this is a more accurate biometric technology so far, but it's a more invasive. You know, people actually feel like scared with that light because some people think that it is a laser, and everybody knows that the laser just in your eyes can you became blind, sorry. But of course, it is not a laser. And you can be authenticated with the pattern of your veins here, your wrist, DNA, of course, fingerprints, of course, and you have another kind of behavioral, another kind of biometric, which is a behavioral biometric. So far, you have well accepted signature, handwriting recognition. You can be authenticated by your voice recognition and this is a keystroke dynamics, is the way that you type. You can be authenticated. And now, there are some applications where you can be recognizing the way that you walk. You can have an intelligent floor. You know, you can recognize your grandfather or someone even without actually watching his face. But you can recognize that person based on the way that person walks, right? And there are another, sorry, I forgot to mention another physiological interesting biometric method, which is with your ear, the way or the shape of your ear. That could be cool because it's pretty different. Now some people is watching as well others here, but it's pretty different. And we were working with NASA and DARPA with some project related to cognitive knowledge. Is that you can be recognized based on the way that you structure your sentences, right? So it could be really useful to recognize people writing an email. If you send an email to me, this software is going to tell you, okay, this email is not typically written by that person. You can feel it, right? When you read an email, it's like, this is not the traditional way that this person write or organize ideas and the words. Big or main challenges inside the biometric world is every time that you have to evaluate the biometric technology, you have to be careful about the false rejection rate. It is, okay, I'm trying to get in, I put my finger, I'm the real person, and the system rejects me. That's why it's a false rejection, right? And the other error is the false acceptance rate. It means that you will put the finger and the system will say, welcome, Daniel. It could be cheat, and this is, it depends. Everybody could say, okay, but this type 2 error is the worst. So it depends on your system or your application. I mean, it is not too critical to have false acceptances, but could be really serious if you have a lot of false redirections. And finally, there are two more aspects. Of course, there are a lot of rates, but it's privacy and user experience. People are really, really concerned about privacy, especially with physiological biometric technology. It's like, okay, I will give you my iris pattern or something more private, and if someone stole your patterns, I cannot change my eye. This is a big challenge for physiological technology. On the other hand, with behavioral biometric technology, if the way that you type could be stalled, yes, maybe, but you can retrain another pattern, type in another password or another phrase, right? For instance. I just wanted to, before going to the next point, I just wanted to show you what we are doing. For instance, we have integrated this technology with Google Apps. I will try to get in here in my Google email. This is a typical Google Apps URL, right? And then Google redirect this, instead of going to the traditional login page, it is resending this to this page. And I don't have to type my user ID because I registered that computer for my user properly. And it says, I'm awaiting the authorization for your mobile device. When I bought this cell phone, this big cell phone, I never imagined that it could be useful now, for instance, to have a good view. No, it's like a TV. Okay, here I have an app. If I tap here in the app, I receive an alert saying, okay, someone is trying to get into your Google Apps account from that browser, that IP address. I can tap here, I can see the map where this person is trying to get in from. And now I can say, okay, yes, grant access. If I tap here in deny, I will block this browser for 30 minutes for security reasons. But if I put here grant, I'm demonstrating that I have the right device. But now I have to demonstrate that the person behind the device is the right person, right? Can you try it? If you win, you will win a bottle of wine from Mendoza, Argentina. Sounds good, right? Now everybody wants to try it. You have to, this is clear because it says, it says here, tap your song's rhythm. Of course, you have to know thank you. You have to know my song. You have to have my cell phone, and on top of that, you have to know my song. Okay, my song is La Bamba. Who knows La Bamba? Here, this is an expert. Expert dancer. You have to.
And singer.
And singer. Okay. Now you have to tap here, La Bamba, the rhythm, and then when you get this button green.
I obviously don't know it as well as I
And try to, and now put here, what does it say?
access to
Access denied, right?
my rhythm is off.
And now I did La Bamba, and look at the screen there. It's like out of channel verification. I didn't need to oh, it's a typical demo. I don't need to type my user ID, neither my password, another code or something weird. I just need to tap my personal rhythm, and I have to just do the segment of my favorite tune, and that's it. What about if you don't have your mobile device? You have to try typing, right? Okay, if I type, for instance, my user is Daniel Authenware, and my password is, oh, sorry. Okay, I type my user ID and password, and you can see here, congratulations, your user ID and password are correct, and your signature matches with your biometric pattern. It means that I type the right user ID and password, typing with my personal rhythm. Okay, who wants to win a bottle of wine? Come here, please. It's like a trip into it. Okay, my user ID is here. I will write down here. Is Daniel.
Show the camera when you get done.
Authenware. And my password is Daniel. If you have a computer, you can try it because it is an open demo, stead.authenware.com. Daniel Caselles. Try it. No pressure.
Did I get it wrong?
No, it's okay, it's okay.
No, I didn't. Yeah, I see it. Well,
Okay.
I guess I've already
No,
now.
but it could be another test because we can check that if you are not typing the right credentials, you will be rejected with another message, right? For instance.
Looks like I.
No, it's okay, it's okay. You should, here it says user ID and password do not match. Please, so try again, please. One more time.
Are the fields independent of each other?
We have some kind of relationship. For instance, we are taking key down and key up events. We are creating your pattern based on your cadence, but we are complementing your signature with environmental information such as your IP address, time zone, ISP.
Probability, you think like a gas, you say.
Here we go. Okay, I'm so sorry. We can share your wine anyway. This is a big applause. Look at this. It says, sorry, your user ID and password are correct, but your entry does not match with your registered biometric pattern. Let me show you graphically how it works. This is a graphic representation. The gray zone is my pattern, and this blue line is this entry. For instance, let me show you the previous one. It's quite different, but still match. And here is the last entry, and you can see how the entry doesn't match with the pattern, right? And for instance, regarding the two fields, we are capturing how many times you fail typing. If you have to delete, the likelihood that you fail always in the same character is really high. Or if you're accustomed to use the tab key to go from the user ID to the password field, or some people use the mouse, or if you press enter at the end of use the mouse, you can see here, and this is just a demo, and you can go there, register yourself, and play with friends. It's really funny. And you have some kind of constraint because of this is the worst condition for the technology, because we're trying to hack it from the same computer at the same time is the worst condition, right? From the environmental viewpoint. Yes.
Is it easy to change the pattern that you entered?
Let's ask the questions with the mic here so that those on the webcast can hear.
Is it easy to change the pattern that you sent? Because I noticed that the site doesn't use SSL, so you've just sent the entire parameters in the clear.
Okay. Obviously, this is a intelligent algorithm. It is learning. If you are varying your biometric pattern, but it is smooth, this algorithm will learn from this variation. But if you, for instance, have broken your arm and you have to type with one hand, you can create an additional biometric pattern typing with one hand. For instance, in my case, I have a huge keyboard and I have two different patterns for the same set of credentials. And I don't need to tell the algorithm I'm entering from this keyboard or the other one, right? Yes.
How do you teach that system? Oh,
Here's the
my arm
mic.
is, how do you teach the system? Oh, my arm is broken after the fact.
Okay.
Or let us say you have all of a sudden headaches, or you're drunk and you cannot log in.
Okay. We you know what? We did that test, the drunk test. We have a lot of volunteers. You know, it was the first time that the people in the testing, the QA team was the king. And okay, if you are really drunk or you are not typing in your personal way, you are not going to enter. Could be useful. But just in case, you have a third factor authentication. If you fail 3 times or 2 times, you can configure in a row, you will receive a one-time password, right? And you have to confirm that you are you based on that one-time password, or that you are going to an additional authentication factor. But the idea is always to keep strong authentication. Strong authentication means, and coming back, did I respond to your question? Sorry, did I answer your question?
The first part was arm broken, but you haven't configured. The first part of the question was you haven't. Let us say your arm is broken, but you haven't configured the system for one hand typing or something.
No, you don't have to configure the system in that way. In fact, for instance, I have an additional pattern, which is like late pattern. When I'm in the bed typing like this, sometimes it's like something natural, you know. It's like you change your pattern, or if you change your device, your kind of device, you can never type in the same way in your iPhone, in your iPad, and in your desktop. And you don't need to configure the system in some particular way to just train the pattern. And you need 5 times to train your pattern, 5 entries, right? Yes.
Do we have time for more questions, or do you want to wait till the end? It's up to you.
It's okay. One more question,
Okay.
and we continue.
I'm just curious, it seems to me that you said that the software has the ability to learn my idiosyncrasies. Like maybe I make a certain type of mistake fairly frequently, which I do when I'm typing in my password. So it can learn that, but does it learn dynamically, or does it learn through some specific capture scenario?
That's a good question. It's dynamically. Every time that you get access, this last entry is part of the pattern, and the algorithm recalculates the pattern based on this last entry. For instance, the first time that you change your password, you are like more slow typing mode, and day by day you are getting more speed, and this natural speed that you gain just typing, it is incorporated to their parent, and your parent evolved, actually. Okay, it was just in order to show you what we are working on, and this is basically behavioral biometry, right? The tune tapping is a very innovative way to be authenticated, and very secure because it is based on what you have, which is your registered device. By the way, we are integrating now the smartwatch and Google Glass also to be authenticated just doing this, right? And you just need to have the right device, the registered device. You have to know something, my song, and which part of the song, and you have to type it or tap in my personal rhythm. It's like the natural evolution of the keystroke dynamics. It's like if you were typing in one key, only one key, everything. You have your rhythm in one key, right? And when you are combining, before starting with this, when you are combining 2 or more authentication factors, we have strong authentication. This is a challenge, is to keep strong authentication. But the big challenge is trying to keep natural strong authentication. Because the more authentication factor we add, the worse for the end user, right? And finally, this is the last challenge, which is authorization. Okay, since you are the real person, because you have been authenticated correctly, okay, what are you allowed to do? And I love to use this example of the passport, because, okay, this is me with the passport. I'm Daniel, and the officer makes this work of the computer, face recognition and everything. Okay, you are allowed to enter. I've been authenticated until that. Being here inside the country, I'm allowed to work or not, or I'm allowed to study based on my visa, right? It means that you have to configure or to define the 3 aspects: identification, authentication, and authorization. Was it clear enough with these 3 concepts? Okay, great. But this is the big pain today. It's like we have to deal with dozens, average 26. This is the average worldwide, right? But I bet that here the minimum is 80 probably passwords, right? Or some people that I know, 150 was the last time that we were talking about this topic. It's like it is insane. That's why people are getting more and more this kind of password change to keep everything in order. You have to keep also pins for several things, for the alarm, for the ATM. You have to keep in mind different Q&A, question and answer, for different places or entities. Tokens, wherever if we are talking about soft token or hard token, same thing. We have to deal with different tokens. Coordinate cards. It was the coordinate card here. It's another authentication factor based on what you have. It's a paper, it's a piece of paper. When you enter your user ID and password, the system requires you to enter, for instance, the coordinate G4. And you have to enter the letter in that cell, right? Row and column. And you know, everybody does the following. It's like you take a picture of that card, and you can keep that card in your cell phone. And you know, it is not so secure, but it is cheap. It's a cheap solution. We have some biometric technology coming, but due to the fact that usually biometric technology means hardware acquisition and hardware maintenance. It is really slow. Password sharing is another nightmare. And forget it about using the same password for several websites. I know that here nobody does this mistake, right? But this is natural, you know? And on top of that, we have a serious legal hole, which is user ID versus a person. If we are doing an audit in your company, for instance, and we discover that someone stole something, some information, some database, or what we can be sure is, okay, this user ID did this, and this at that time from that IP address and blah, blah, blah. But how can you prove that the person using that user ID was a real person? And usually, I'm talking about trials, it's a real challenge. Because you are the company, you have the proof, okay, you stole my confidential information from my company, and you just need to say, no, someone stole my credentials or my user ID and password, and now, as a company, I have to demonstrate that you were the person behind that user ID at that moment, at that place. You know what I mean? This is a big challenge, actually. And on top of that, that's in order to wrap up this point, is we have this nightmare per each website, entity, or in your company, you have those. And what is the trend? Because we could be here talking about the past. No, we are talking about today. Oh, okay, but don't worry, because tomorrow, if we keep doing the same thing, it's going to be better. You know, we don't need to do anything. And it is not the right thing. It's even exactly the opposite. And here it is, the big mistake. Try to imagine if you have to go to the bank and you register your signature, and 1 second before starting signing, that person says, no, hold on. Here, for our bank, your signature has to have 3 cycles and 2 points. So what? It's my signature. It's okay, it's your signature. You can be creative, you can create your own signature, but we have just a little constraint. It's for security, for your security. You know, you just need to be creative. You know, create a new signature with 3 circles and 2 points. And you say, oh, okay, let me try it. And finally, you deliver that requirement. And then 2 hours later, you go to the notary, and the notary says, no, your signature with me has to have 3 vertical lines and a couple of square everywhere, up to you. And every time that you have to connect with someone else and demonstrate that you are the right person signing, you have different signatures. Does it sound like something normal? Yes, it's very normal. In the virtual world, it's exactly like that. Every time that we have to a new interaction with a new website, with a new app, even with my daughter's school, you know, it's like when I went to the school, I was like, okay, this is a school, and her teacher told me, okay, you have to register in this website and create a new account in order to follow the performance app and blah, blah. And we're in, you know, in Safeway and the supermarket and everything. you have to create a new identity and follow the constraint. And that's why it says discovering the big mistake. Some time ago, we create this model. You know, it's a one singular signature for each entity. And the big mistake here is all your identity and your authentication factors are not yours. It's like today belongs to each entity. So you have one entity, or maybe you can share one entity and several authentication factors for each institution or website or whatever that you're connecting with. This is clearly a security-driven approach. Let me tell you something. In my role as a CTO, we are a security company, as you can see here. It says a security guard. It's just in case, you know, if you cannot sell enough, you can become in 2 minutes in the security guard in the door. But we have to deal all the time with the chief security officer, right? And the chief technology officer. And guess what? They don't care about how easy is for you life, your digital life. They don't care about if you have to carry a big chain with dozens of keys. It's your problem. My mission here is to be sure that nobody will enter this company being the fake user. That's it. That's it. This is my responsibility. You know, it's like okay, I will never be fired. I know that it could be sound really strong, but I never will be fired if I keep all the bad guys outside. If the good guys are suffering a lot, if their life are miserable, it is not my job, you know? If the bad guys are outside, that's it. And we have every single CTO, CSO thinking in the same way. What is the victim here? All of us. Even that guy, we can see that guy as a user, like an end user, right? It is not sustainable. This is the problem. That's why I wrote their selfish corporate goals. You know, it's like, okay, this is my problem. And of course, this is a joke, but let's imagine an end user union, global union. We will be feeling that pressure of that union of end users saying, no, we are not allowed to, we are not willing to have more and more passwords. Okay, guys, you are the engineers. You are the smart people. You are here in the Silicon Valley. You have to solve this issue without make my life miserable. Can you imagine that situation? Okay, I'm here and represent on behalf of that number of users, because I'm sure that if they could have this kind of voice, they would say something like that, right? What we can expect is strong authentication. Now, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to Washington to this security and risk management event organized by Gartner. It's a huge event. And one of the main concerns is, okay, we need to add strong authentication. Imagine strong authentication means at least second factor authentication for each password that you already have now. It doesn't seem to be something cool for us. Okay, more everyone going to the cloud, which is a big risk without strong authentication. You cannot keep everything in the cloud without strong authentication. More wearable devices, electronic interaction, more identity theft and fraud, and on top of that, based on this Moore law, we are losing 1 bit of security, of encryption security per year based on the power of processing or processing power that we are getting for hacking attempts. Okay, this is our proposal. Our proposal is we need to give the authentication and the identity back to the real owner, which is the end user. That's why the end user will keep the wallet, the authentication wallet. You will have your own wallet, authentication wallet with all your authentication factors, but you will keep one password, only one password, one PIN, one fingerprint registration, one tune tapping registration, only one per each factor authentication, not for each entity that I'm having a relationship with, right? And it is changing the color, or is it me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Security, right?
Security. In 3 minutes, it will be striped. Okay. So let's imagine this interaction. I will go to the ATM to get money, or I will pay with my credit card. Every time that I have to travel, it's the same nightmare. I arrive in Europe, I use my corporate credit card, and they blocked it. For security reasons, for my security. Because they said, no, but you were in California. Yes, but you know, some people like to travel, and now I'm in Europe. Yes, but it is a software that detects a normal behavior. You shouldn't be there. And now, thank you for calling. It's for your security. Now you can use it. Right? Next time, this is funny. Next time, please call us before flying. Okay, like my mom. You know? It's unbelievable. So in this case, try to imagine that you are trying to get into another website, or pay with your credit card, or trying to get money from your ATM, and at that moment, out of channel, those entities will check who is your wallet, authentication wallet provider. Who keeps your authentication wallet in the cloud? Could be, I put here New Market because it's like the internet service provider. Before internet, we didn't have it, you know? But based on this model, you could be an authentication wallet provider. It means that you are keeping, in a very secure way, all the authentication factor of certain number of users. Okay, let's say your authentication wallet provider is Authenware. Okay, then that company will check with this company, can you please verify if this is a real user trying to do this transaction from this location, or georeferencing, and then using all your devices or wearable devices, or based on what you know, what you have, on what you are all together or whatever, and based on what is the security level that you require from the entity here, from the requester, you will be able to require, okay, you know what, Danny? Are you the person trying to get 3 K from that ATM in this address? Yes. Okay, now you have to confirm it with 2 factors. Press a PIN or your fingerprint if you have this capability in your device, or do your tune tapping or something like that. Then the entity that will confirm that the person is the right person on the other side of that transaction is this provider, this wallet provider. And then it will go back to confirm it. And this is the way that this authentication against Google Apps works today. Okay, they are using SAML or other technology now, but this is the focus of this proposal. You know, the main constraint as engineers should be nobody should keep more than 1 password, 1 PIN, or 1 authentication factor. This is a challenge, I know that. But we have to start from this end user approach and build all the rest. Otherwise, it is not sustainable. I know that I'm not talking about something simple. But let's compare with the other path. The other path, okay, let's continue doing what we have done until now. You know? Yes.
Who authenticates the wallet provider?
Okay, this is a good question.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes. Who authentifies the wallet provider? Okay, you have this certificate authority, right? It's like and on top of that, this is a model, right? The idea is that if you are, for instance, Wells Fargo, you can say, okay, I just accept this list of authentication providers. You know, if you don't have your wallet with this list, you should switch your wallet, and that's why we need this open international standard, because we don't want to be, you know, the slave of one company forever with all my registration with one company, right? Otherwise, it could be a big monopoly around authentication. Nobody wants that, you know. It's like even though it could be easier, if you have to do something and you are required to register using your Facebook account or your Google account, it is with OpenID. It's another standard for the identity federation. Some people choose to avoid that because they don't want to create this link between my personal Facebook account and my social life and this new entity. You know what I mean? And this is a matter of privacy also. It is not only an easier life. Yes.
Okay, so this sounds to me like multi-channel single sign-on. So one of the problems that, and I've come across this.
Sorry.
So
yes, much better.
Appears to me,
Especially
multi-channel single sign-on. So we talked to another company, and the issue that came up is how, you know, if you're in an enterprise, a lot of times the enterprise, an administrator automatically provisions, like you're on SAP, I'm going to send you the password and the login. It's pushed to you. It's not, you don't pull it, it's pushed. So how would this be pushed to you such that it gets to your wallet so it appears so you can access it?
Okay, it will be another layer, right? What we are trying to do here is let's think about this model, first of all, with one user, different entities or requesters, and one authentication wallet provider. But at the end of the day, I can install there behind that. Let me go here, it's easier. here in this area, you can install all the middleware that you can need in order to make that federation, or if you want to use, for instance, that authentication as a single sign-on for all your system behind that single sign-on, or that design, yes, that login page. But the idea is, okay, again, from the end user's perspective, let's think again, rethink the authentication challenge, keeping in mind that we have to deal with more than 100 of entities. We have to keep only one authentication factor for each. You can keep probably 2 wallets, right? You can have your important wallet and some other wallet for other things, or you can keep 2 identities into the same wallet. But it is let me here. Just one more. Did I answer your question? Okay. Based here, I wanted to mention this because it is not in the scheme, but this is authentication wallet developers, because the idea is that we can create a new market here also. As you have several of companies developing email clients. Why? Because it is an open standard. And you can be sure that if you are developing an email client, if you can talk POP, IMAP, and SMTP, and you can really make it work perfectly, and even keeping the same provider, email provider, you can change your client. You know what I mean? It's like we are trying to think in something that actually allows us to have alternative, but alternative based on that main principle, which is, okay, we need to keep only one password, only one fingerprint, and so on. Yes.
I have a question. Who will hold the responsibility if their system fails?
Okay, it's a good question.
Who will hold the responsibility if their system fails and somebody take money from my account?
Okay, it's a good question, very good question. In fact, this is, now I'm talking from my viewpoint or my personal standpoint, which is security. The idea is that you know how the DNS service works. If your primary DNS fail, you have a secondary DNS, and you can third DNS, and so on. And the idea is to create this kind of international high availability for the same provider, right? And
excuse me, I'm afraid you don't understand my question.
okay.
If somebody take money from my bank account, who will reimburse it or whatever? Who will spend? Which expense it will be? Bank, mine expense, or authentication value provider?
Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood your question. You're talking about the legal responsibility or the economic responsibility. Okay, someone stole the money. Okay, definitely today is the bank, because it's responsible for the authentication. It requires a change of that agreement, because that bank will trust in this authentication wallet provider, and this company have to respond in case that it says, okay, this is the right person and it wasn't, right? This is it was a question, right?
Yeah, basically basically that means that it would be no common authentication value provider, because each bank don't believe just authentication value provider.
Yes,
They don't trust him.
okay, it was exactly the same when internet came up, right? It means that, okay, how can I trust that it is the right server? How can I trust that between the communication between two servers? And we have to create digital certificates, and we have to create CAs, and we have to create another structure. No, it's okay, it's okay. You're good enough in order we can continue discussing this point at the end, but I wanted to make everyone participate.
Are you done
Sorry.
with the slides? Are you opening for Q&A now? Are you done with your slides?
We've got about 10 minutes.
No, it's okay. I prefer, if you don't mind, I prefer to go and finish
Finish, okay.
with the slide, because I know, I really know, I really understand that when you see a new model and be an engineer, it's like, no, but what about this point, and I find that this is not gonna work, and I just please ask you for permission to finish this part, and then we'll discuss openly about all the concerns. Okay, some risk or main risk and challenges that we have detected. Okay, this is big guys won't be happy with this open proposal, because some people know here in some place, some people wants to rule the world, you know. In some movies, you know, it doesn't happen in reality, you know. But it's just in case that person from the movie could come up. We have to be prepared that maybe with this open standard, someone could feel uncomfortable because he's losing the strategy, the business, or something like that. We have to be smart enough to embrace the whole industry in order to, okay, we have to make some changes. But we have to, again, we have to rethink. I know that it could be uncomfortable, but believe me, we are talking about some big pain that is going to be worse and worse and worse, and it's going to collapse. And we are on time now to create something new and to reorganize and say, okay, you know what? This, you know, Fernando Corbato says today, because he's alive, he said, when I invented password, I didn't mean to create something for 50 years, you know? The industry is crazy. It's hard to believe that in 50 years, we cannot come up with something new, with a smarter approach, right? Is this a solution? I don't know. It's just a proposal, just a proposal. You know what? I wanted to start with this. I love technical discussion. And the more we discuss, the better. The better the model could be. We can come up with another model, and finally, the open international standard is totally different to this. I don't mind. We decided to share this model with everyone openly when we discovered that even doing the right thing as a company, as Authenware, we are a 100% authentication focused company. Probably we are not big enough to fight that battle. But you know what? Our mission is to say, hey guys, we've been here for 6 years fighting against authentication challenge, and even doing the right thing is not going to work. Why? Because it is not sustainable from the end user's viewpoint, right? And that is why this is one of the main challenges. The lack of massive adoption, of course, as any other standard, the lack of authentication wallet providers and certificators, volunteers to create this new standard, It was a brainstorming that came up with the team. It says, what you comment about the single point of failure? Also, and privacy and security, and we have to solve, you know what, from my opinion, there isn't one person that can answer all the questions. We need to create a great team with lawyers, with all the legs of the table, that we need to create something really smart and better. And then we can create something new. We have to engage with all the current initiatives, such as FIDO, for instance, FIDO Alliance. This is a pretty good initiative. It is not this approach. It is still based on the company approach. They are open if you pay 25K. You know, it's like you're assuming that the smartest ideas came from the richest people.
Always true.
You know what? If it is true, why big companies are buying small companies? Why? If you are big enough, you have all the power, all the innovation, all the economic power. You don't need small companies for what? You know what I mean? It's like we need to really play an open and transparent game, especially with security and this kind of standard. And we have to still solve, because that model that I share with you, it is based on a connected the internet of the things and everything connected. But what about if you're unplugged? You know, we have some ideas, but if you're unplugged, how can you solve this issue, right? And finally, the challenge is to file a proposal here in the Internet Engineering Task Force. But we believe that that's the place to file the standard, the proposal. But this is the place to create it. You know, it's like we need people like you discussing this specific topic, this model. Or you know what? Let's drop this model and let's start from scratch. But let's agree on the principle. The principle is end-user oriented approach. Conclusion. Why an open standard? We need an open standard and free standard for authentication now is authentication as a service. And this is just an example. Are you enjoying internet? Do you remember when you, I still remember when you come up with your laptop some time ago and you ask for connection and someone asked you, are you IBM compatible? Is it a token ring protocol or is it like a, or is a novel network? You remember that? Now, I just arrived here and I said, I need internet connection, and that's it. Here it is. And why? Because some time ago, they discovered the power of the standardization, the open standard. I really love to explain when some people outside our work ask me, who is the real owner of internet? It's Bill Gates, isn't it? No. Steve Jobs, this is died. No, this is the United States. If they can power off internet. Yes, they can power off their internet. But you can create a new internet inside, I don't know, Spain or not, because everything is open. Everything is well define and you can create your internal internet. And we need something, my dream is something like this. It's like, okay, after this standard, we can decide to create a new startup for create communication cards, right? In this layer, or we can create this or TCP/IP or whatever, or application. It's like okay, and you can be sure that everything will work perfectly because you are keeping the interface, right? This is the idea. If you have a wallet with Google, for instance, and you want to change your wallet to Facebook or any other company, okay, it's up to you because it's a standard, and you don't have to be dealing or fighting against format or compatibility or this kind of thing. Come on, we're in 2014. We don't need to deal with this kind of unproductive approach. This digital revolution, until now, is like a revolution that it is not thinking on the end user when we think in the authentication process. Our proposal is just a draft. This is a model, and all the constraints of that model are engineering challenge. I've been exchanging this model with several engineers, and they told me, you know what? The big discussion must be the model. After agreeing on that model, all the rest is just engineering, right? And finally, this is the goal, is to give the identity back to the owner, who is the end user. And I strongly believe that as engineers, we can be bridges or walls, you know, and I really love to see that we are in the computer society chapter. We shouldn't forget about this word, society, right? Otherwise, we are too focused on computer. Thank you very much.
So Trevor will present the something, and then what do we have, like 5 minutes?